In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
From beautiful Saline in southeastern Michigan.
Around the world at sunsky.mysteries.com.
This is the 2009 Top 10 Webcam in the World winner. This is SETV.
Well, good evening, everybody. Bill Zam here. Welcome to a very special Friday night show with me, Bill Zam, and our special guest, CK Quarterman. I am a little bit under the weather. I have a pretty good case of walking pneumonia, so I will be hacking, coughing, snorting, sneezing, and otherwise disrupting the entire show. You know, we have had a lot of ministers on this show. We had Russ Dizdar. He was on the show, and he actually blessed our show. He blessed some water, and we sprinkled the holy water around, and we prayed and everything, and it was great. We had Pastor Paul Bagley on, and same thing, a very, very strong Christian. We have guests from the ministries that show us exactly how evil works in this world, how it has twisted and abused people, how evil incarnate has made men its plaything. But never have I been taught the actual origin of that evil. This book, Fallen Angels, is your guide to that. I downloaded the book for my Kindle, and I read it this week. It is an amazing read. There is a link at on the video side as well as the audio side so that you can download this book. You need to read this thing. When I start out writing one of these scripts for our interviews, I usually have a clear path ahead of me. I know the way to the end of the interview when I say goodnight. This one was one of those cases where I just didn't know what path to take. It is a case where I have placed my faith, my belief, that we are doing the show for a purpose. And that purpose goes through my fingers on the keyboard. Let us take a journey tonight into a plot so deep, so thick, and so magnificent in its very nature that it leads me to believe that this subject tonight is one of the keys to the truth that we seek on Surrounded by Idiots. Faith. Now, what is faith? People all over the world, from every society, every language, all have some type of faith. But what is it? It is trust. A wife has faith that her husband loves her. A child has faith that their teacher is showing them the truth. Likewise, that child has faith inbred in its being that that child's parents are telling them the truth. Sadly, in nearly every case, faith can and does become abused, misused, and trampled. But why? Our guest tonight knows why and has paid the price for telling the truth. Earlier this week, I sat down with his book, Fallen Angels, by CK Quarterman. I really didn't know what to expect. Well, let me rephrase that. I expected to be taken out on a limb, is what I expected, and I was disappointed in that regard. This book is not only well written and researched, it is one of those sources of information that people of faith and of all faiths need to read. For when you do, more scales are removed from your eyes and the truth is then closer to setting you free. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome our guest, Mr. C.K. Quarterman. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Bill. Glad to be here.
Ah, yes, excellent. CK has an excellent radio voice. I really like his voice. It comes through nice and clear. Where are you guys located, CK?
Well, I'm a little bit mobile. I've got a motorhome, but right now I'm in Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh, what's the weather like down there? It's about in the 70s right about now?
No, it's a little murky, probably 65 or so.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not too bad. Up here, we have had no winter here in Michigan.
Well, we really haven't had one much here either. No snow at all.
Yeah, we've had, just a few inches of snow here and there. So, at any rate, folks, what I thought I would do tonight, because this book that CK has written is, it takes you through the I think the actual definition of evil, as well as how Lucifer and all of the fallen angels got their start. So we're going to go through the book, basically chapter by chapter, and we're going to talk a little bit about each chapter and then expand on it a little bit with the time that we have. And the first part that I have here, and the video side, you can see it up on the screen, but it is begins with a quote from George Orwell, and that quote is this: "In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act." And the first part of this chapter goes like this: some people are going to need to be convinced. They are going to need more than the Sunday sermon, because they are sincerely grappling with misconceptions of safety and peace that need to be dealt with. CK, what does that mean? Why did you write that as one of the first sentences in your book?
Because I find that people have roadblocks in front of them, maybe things they've been taught, maybe things that somebody told them, and that has to be removed from their thinking in order to be able to see the truth.
Okay. Now you have a couple of quotes in here, one from a few from Winston Churchill, and essentially what you're saying in this is that we have a short time to blow the trumpet, to make people aware that the four horsemen of the apocalypse are about to begin their ride. We, like Churchill, must not give ourselves over to appeasing men. We must bellow the warning from the rooftops, in the highways and the byways. Your book does that, I believe, and I think everybody should get a copy of this book and read it, or at least be familiar with the concepts behind it. This first chapter, you go through essentially the origins of Lucifer and the beginnings of evil.
That's correct.
Yes. What? Take us through that. Take us through those, where Lucifer came from. And regular viewers of the show are probably going to recognize some parts of this, because you probably haven't heard this. As a matter of fact, what were your sources for this?
Well, the sources I've used, of course, is primarily the Bible, and the books of which are known as Jubilees and First Enoch and Jasher. And these are historical books of Jewish origin. They are not Bible, but they're very accurate as far as their historical authenticity. They're very old and ancient text. They agree with the scriptural accounts, and they don't take away from them whatsoever, but they do add a little bit of color to the account. And another book I might mention also is The Life of Adam and Eve. It's a little bit less known than the three other ones I mentioned, but they add a color and a fullness to the Genesis story that you may not see on the surface of Genesis when you're looking at it. And it's, I think, important to give a little bit further understanding of what's going on in Genesis than what the surface read of Genesis would give you, because there we understand the beginning of where all of this began. And that's what we want to understand, is how did this evil come into being, and how does it affect us?
Right. Pardon me. That was my first throat clearing of the evening, folks. The Bible itself, the canons, they don't really go into the history in depth about the origins of Lucifer and the fallen angels. And I think That is, I don't know if the Bible that we have now, the canons, I don't know if the people that were putting that together originally were somehow influenced by the evil ones or not, to keep this information out of the Bible and out of the mainstream for humanity. But let's go into the origins of Lucifer. Where did he come from? And I read in the book that he was in charge of the planets. Is that right? Do I remember that right?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Because
I might mention too, Bill. There's what I'm hearing. There's like a background echoing of everything that's being said. I don't know if you can adjust that or not, but to give you the background of Lucifer, the celestial worlds, as it were, involved this solar system, and probably even well beyond that. It was made up of the planets that we see now, and also one other planet, Rahab, which the Bible mentions just briefly. And the name Rahab means boaster, and that's the home planet of Lucifer. And that's what we know today as the asteroid belt. Scientists would refer to it as the exploding planet hypothesis. And I mention it, of course, on my website a little bit more in depth. But what I want to do is take you back in time here, before Genesis 1:1, before God created the heavens and the earth. What was going on there? Well, there was a divine council or congregation, if you would. You get a little bit of a picture of it when you open your Bible to the book of Revelations, and you see the 4 and 24 thrones, and you see the elders around the throne of God. That's a little bit of a picture of what it looked like. If you can imagine that and expanding out beyond that, what's called the congregation, or all of the angels of creation that were at that time, that were before the throne of Almighty God. And there was a hierarchy here. We read in Isaiah that Lucifer, or Satan, was in charge of the mountain, the planets of fire, or the stones of fire is the way the King James puts it, but it's referring to planets. You know, if I looked out in the solar system and I were going to describe a planet, I'd call it a stone of fire. And that's what the Bible refers to as stones of fire. And it lists the planets like they are jewels, and talks about Lucifer walked upon the sides of the north, referring to in God's holy area where this throne was. And everyone is familiar with the fact that Lucifer, or Satan, fell because of pride. But my question was, okay, well, there are different kinds of pride. What kind of pride exactly are we talking about? And in the book, I refer to it as the mafia mentality. It's an I will exalt myself above everybody else. I want a bigger piece of the pie than what I've got. And if you read those verses in Isaiah that are referring to Lucifer, I've forgotten the chapter, but it's the very common verses and chapter in there. You find that Lucifer, because of merchandising and enterprise, was lifted up in pride, meaning that he wanted a bigger piece of whatever trade was going on between the planets. There was a book recently, and well, in fact, several have been written about Mars and the faces on Mars, and it will not surprise me if they find on these other planets some form of destroyed angelic civilizations.
Wow.
Because I feel like among these planets there were trade going on, and Satan, Lucifer, was over this, but evidently being in charge of all of the commerce going on in the universe just wasn't enough. He wanted all of it. And that's sort of the mafia mentality, the Godfather, if you would. You know, he's never satisfied. He wants everything. And that was Lucifer's sin. Now, what happened in this congregation when he made this statement and this claim was that all the other heavenly hosts, the other ministering spirits, the angels, the cherubim, the seraphim, and so forth, all heard and saw this claim for a greater power, a greater, for everything. And it planted a seed inside of them. And let me explain by that what I mean, because it explains why judgment has waited so long, why God even puts up with this earth and puts up with you and I. And it's the outworking of this principle here. If you take a child and that child is watches its mother, for instance, being abused by its father, and that child grows up and says, well, I'm not going to be that way. I'm going to treat my wife decently. I'm not going to be like my father. Well, he grows up and he has a child and he gets a little bit older, and despite himself, he finds himself being his father. And all of a sudden, he's hit his wife, and the next thing you know, he's beating on her. And every time he does, he says, I'm not going to do that anymore. Forgive me. I'm not ever going to touch you again. And he turns around and he does it again. Well, this is what happened in heaven, is that the other angelic host, the host of heaven, saw this bid for power and God's rejection of it, but it planted that seed within them. So the only answer was time. God would have to give the universe, this dimension that we live in, and the spiritual dimension, he would just have to give it time to see in who all watching this outplay that this seed planted would spring into an evil harvest. And that same principle works in the angelic host as it does in us. And that's the reason judgment has lingered all the way up into this day. I believe that we're on the precipice of judgment now. I think that people are asleep, and when I opened up in the very beginning discussion of the book, I talked about that. I find people are sort of like ostriches. They have their head in the sand. They don't want to see what's going on around them, but the world's just traveling as fast as it can toward the judgment day. In fact, I did a little bit of a survey where I took I actually did this through an Excel spreadsheet and through email and so forth, but the idea was, if you took a box, for instance, and you made a dog out of the box, out of several boxes, and you sat in a mall and you pulled your little dog behind you and set it on the seat with you and talked to it, how would people react? Well, I found that the great majority of people, knowing something was wrong, seeing how strange it would still walk by, look the other way, and act like they never saw anything. And that's what the world is doing today as we're on the precipice of judgment. The tribulation, the times of Jacob's trouble are right on the doorstep. We just don't want to see it. We're asleep. We're in a slumber. And the book, particularly the first part of the book, is a call to wake up and be aware of how close we are. Back to you, Bill.
Okay, I think probably the echo that you're hearing when you hear me talk is through the video player on the website where you're in the chat.
Okay.
That's probably where the echo is coming from. A lot of our guests go onto the site where the chat is, and so they can see what questions people are asking, and they can chat amongst with the audience while I'm blathering away. And the audio is up on the video stream, and they hear an echo, and they're scratching their head going, oh, what the heck is going on here? And that's pretty much what it is.
Thank you. I just corrected it. I can think now.
Yes. I know it drives you crazy, but you were doing such a good job of answering that. I was just sitting here mesmerized. My staff is they're in the production chat right now, and they are absolutely amazed by what you just told them. And the next part of the book, that gives you a basic concept of where Lucifer came from. If you can imagine the throne of God and the congregation of what do we call them? The Holy of Holies, the saints, the angels?
No, the heavenly host.
The heavenly host, all around God on his throne. And Lucifer is in charge of the planets, and there's trade and commerce and everything else. And he decides he wants more and gets greedy and decides to challenge God, and that's where all the trouble starts.
That's exactly right.
It's all his fault. Now we get into the next part of the book, where the first part of that is, as in the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of man be. That's from Matthew 24:37. Now the word I'm having a brain freeze. How do you pronounce it? Nephilim. The word Nephilim appears in the Bible twice. Once in Genesis.
I would say Nephilim.
Okay.
Or Nephilim. People pronounce it both ways.
Okay. Nephilim is fine with me. The word Nephilim appears in the Bible twice, once in Genesis and again in Numbers. The definition of Nephilim is the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men, as well as the giants who inhabited Canaan before the Israelites. We know that the sons of God were fallen angels. The daughters of men are human women. The two should not have been coming together, but clearly they were, and the result of such unions were beings known as the Nephilim, larger and stronger than mere human beings. And God, this is from Genesis now, and God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. Genesis 6:12. That is, you go into that at quite some length in the book about how they infiltrated our dimension. And this goes now, folks. You've heard other guests on the show that have talked about physics and different dimensions and interdimensional beings, and how demons come into our world. And CK has done a marvelous job of relating that to the Bible, our faith, Christianity, and a basic concept of how and why, more importantly, why they come to our dimension. CK, explain that to the listeners. How and why these evil ones, the Lucifer and the fallen angels, come to our dimension to what are they
trying to accomplish?
What are they trying to accomplish? Are they lusting after our chicks?
Yes, that's basically what it boils down to. There is what I call a Nephilim agenda, but the reason that chapter started out and said, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be," is because this portion in Genesis and this story is relative to today. We have some of this same sort of thing going on today. That's the reason the book is titled Fallen Angels, Giants, UFO Encounters, and a New World Order. Before we get into the UFO encounter part of it, which I'm sort of getting ahead of myself, let's go back to Genesis and look at the story, because it's important to understand the beginnings of what was going on, to understand, well, how is today or tomorrow likely to be like it was in the days of Noah. You know, most people read the Bible in a very casual, haphazardly kind of way, and they read about the days of Noah, where they're married and giving marriage and blah, 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 and that's all they read. They don't go back and read, well, what was going on according to the Bible just during the days of Noah. Well, let's look at that first, and we'll go from there. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God, that's the Beni Elohim, that is angels. There are three theories that deal with that as to who these were, but just for time's sake, I'll tell you that they're angels. That word, Beni Elohim, refers to angels in the biblical text. And the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all that they chose. Now, the historical books of Enoch, for instance, state blatantly that these angels, they were called watchers, the Gibron, and the Gergrai, depending on which particular book you might be reading, just basically lusted. They saw the daughters of men, which that in Hebrew says the daughters of Adam, and they lusted after them, and they took those, and that emphasis is they took. It doesn't sound like to me that these wives had much of a choice in it. And I think that's just an important thing to put in the back of your mind there.
So they weren't seduced?
I don't think they were.
Were they in some way maybe fooled?
Forced. That's my opinion, yes.
You believe they were forced, not like fooled, like they didn't show up looking like Julio Iglesias or anything like that?
I don't think so. Not when you take into consideration what these creatures actually, with the mingling of the DNA, the birth of these Nephilim, these creatures, what they looked like, what they were possible of doing, and so forth. I don't think any human woman would willingly go through what would take place. I'm not even sure they survived it.
Huh. Okay. Continue.
Okay, and the sons of God sold to those men. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, but he is also flesh, and yet his days shall be 120 years. But 6:4, there were giants in the earth in those days. Now that word giants is actually Nephilim in the Hebrew. In the King James Version, the word used is giants, coming from the Septuagint version, meaning giantitis, or big, large, ferocious. In the earth in those days, and also, get this, also after that. Okay, it didn't stop here. Also after that, which is, this is often overlooked by theologians and people reading this, but also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Now, these men of renown were the men of mythology. You remember the Greek and the the Greek and the Roman mythology, Bill?
Yes, I am a Greek god.
Didn't mean to imply that, but it almost
You heard it.
came out
You
that
heard
way.
it right. You heard it right here, folks. Yes, we're talking Zeus, Apollo, that sort of men of renown.
That's right. The demigods of old, and of course, in Greek mythology and so forth, the gods are always chasing after earthly women and having children with them. Hence, Hercules and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is the same sort of thing that I think is going on today in the modern UFO phenomena. There's a forced taking, and I think that in the modern UFO phenomena that the, quote, aliens are nothing but fallen angels. It's these sons of God, sort of daughters of men. In the book of First Enoch says that there were 200 watchers, and the word watchers comes from the fact that they were probably good angels who were given charge over watching the daughters of men and the children of men,
Mm-hmm.
but they lusted after women. That most people are under the impression that all the angels fell at one time. Well, I don't believe that. I don't think the Bible teaches that. I think what happened is these angels were good, but they've continued to fall throughout the eons, and that these particular angels, 200 of them at this time, according to Enoch, landed upon Mount Horem in Lebanon, and it said that it was such a frightening sight that the cows on 1,000 hills fled in horror. And you ought to read that particular passage sometime in there if you really want to read something interesting. But these fallen angels took these women, and like I said, it took them wives. Sort of implies to me a forced type of union. And giants, some of these which in history seem to have been maybe as tall as 35 feet. There were certainly some biblical examples. Goliath, for instance. King Og of Bashan said that he had a 13-foot-long bed. Then you've got the Bible even mentions in 1 Chronicles, the 20th chapter, the children of the giants. So these giants even had children. We refer to them as the Eloid. So what was taking place here in Genesis is things got so bad, and there was so much interbreeding that the world, the DNA of the world, was in danger of being totally corrupted. Now, had it been totally corrupted, then God could not have brought the Savior through humanity. You know, there's a verse in it that talks about thy seed shall bruise the head of the serpent. It's a little bit prior to this. Anyway, in Genesis 6:6, it says it repented of the Lord, of course, that he had grieved him so much. I want to read something a little bit after that. It says, and the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing. Now, have you ever wondered why God destroyed the creeping thing and the fowls of the air?
I read in your book the expanded story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and it is actually, believe it or not, a story that I had heard before, and I think it was in a Bible class, but I'm not sure. So why don't the Garden of you go ahead and tell the story, because I just read the book and you're more familiar with it than I am.
All right, well, God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. And now that is a portion, see, again, that we read over things and we don't catch what it's saying, but all flesh had. These fallen angels had mated not only with human women, but had also mated with creeping things and the fowls of the air. Do you remember the like the hieroglyphics in the Egyptian pyramids? You've got pictures of half men and half animals. The Sphinx, for instance, has got the head of a lion.
Yes.
I mean, sorry, the other way around, the head of a man and the body of a lion.
Yes.
Well, in 1 Chronicles, the 20th chapter, we find that David's mighty men slew lion-headed men. These things actually existed in ancient times. They were half animal, half angelic. Not only were the mating, like I said, with the daughters of Adam, but it also went to the point that they were mating with everything that creeped or crawled. So it got so bad, God looked on the earth and said, I'm just going to have to destroy it. And he looks around and he finds one man, Noah. And it said that Noah was a just man, but perfect in his generations. What the ark basically was a DNA safety bottle that was launched while God destroyed the earth. Noah, when it said that he was perfect in all of his ways, is a word used there in the Hebrew that's called tawi. And it's the same word that is used when the sacrificial lamb was slain upon the altar in ancient Israel to cover the sins of the Israelites. It meant that lamb had to be perfect. It could have no physical blemish, which is also an interesting thing, because one of the characteristics of these children of the giants and the giants themselves was that they had extra digits. They had 6 fingers and 6 toes. Just let you think about that for just a second. Not only in the Bible does it mention lion-headed men, but also that they had 6 fingers and 6 toes.
Is that where our 666 comes from?
Could very well be, Bill. If I wanted to emphasize something that was a hybrid, to look for a hybrid, I would say 6. Now, did you hear me? I said 6. Did you get what I said? I said 6. I think that's what 666 is. It's an emphasis on a hybrid. I believe that the Antichrist will be a Nephilim. He will be the child of a human person and of Lucifer himself.
That's pure evil.
Pure evil. That's correct. Now, this was going on in the days of Genesis. So if the days of Christ's return upon the earth are like the days of Genesis, of Noah, then we should look to see this same manipulation of DNA, this same inbreeding going on with fallen angels. So when we look around us, what do we see? Well, we see this UFO phenomena. Now, you might say, well, that's just sort of the wild people out there. Well, it's 2% of the population. Some 23 million people in the United States claim to have had an abduction experience. Now, like I said, let me reiterate, I do not believe in aliens from other universes coming to ours, bypassing the speed of light. I do not believe that. I believe these fallen angels call themselves star gods. In fact, the historical accounts, when they met with the South Americans, they referred to themselves as star gods. But what they are fallen angels coming from another dimension, the spiritual dimension, into our dimension, but claiming to be from a distant world, not our own. That's just a lie. And this is one reason that Revelation speaks of the beast and the Antichrist, and that they'll be with lying wonders. I look for a UFO disclosure where the government comes out and claims it's been dealing with aliens for a long time. People ask me all the time about Roswell. Well, I don't know about the Roswell incident, but I know there's a lot of smoke there, and the old saying goes, when there's smoke, there's fire. There's something that went on there. Now, just recently, there was I have it on my website, there was a funeral for Kim Jong II, the leader of North Korea that just died, and there were thousands of North Koreans lined up in military dress and parade format for the funeral, and the Associated Press was there. There was a very legitimate organization. Anybody that knows the Associated Press knows them for their integrity. Well, anyway, one of their photographers snapped a picture, and lo and behold, in that picture is a giant. He is over twice the size in height of any other North Korean, between 10 and 12 feet high, standing there. I've got a picture of that on my website.
We're at right now on the screen for the folks on the video side. We are at www.fallenangels-ckquarterman.com. I believe that's the website that you're talking about.
That's the website. Mm-hmm.
What page is this article on?
It should be down toward the. Let me look here and I'll see if I can help you here. Should be sort of down toward the bottom where I sort of truncated some of the. Let's see.
I've kind of been switching back and forth between his blog and the little excerpts from the book that I picked out for tonight's show. And this story about the Associated Press photo in North Korea is a new bit of news for our audience. There hasn't been anybody else that has actually mentioned this on the air, so I'm interested in finding out more about it, because
it's on the second page at the very top.
Second page at the very top.
It says, a giant is spotted. Nephilim giants are alive today. Just click on that link and it'll bring up the article.
Let me see here. I'm attempting to
find the giant is spotted.
A giant is spotted. Let's see. Recent posts? Would it be under recent posts?
December 30th. Well, let's see. No, it's not under the recent post. Go to all the way to the bottom of the website, and you see pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Click on page 2.
Let me see here. I am looking for pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I don't see them.
Very bottom.
Comments, the chats. Let's try.
Okay, you're off on one of the pages rather than the blog itself.
Yeah, probably.
Let's see how to tell you to get back. Just go back to the very top in your URL and take out whatever you've got up there where it says page 2 or 3 or something like
good
that.
Idea.
And just go back to the fallenangels-ckquarterman.com.
There we go.
That'll take you to the very first page.
Very first page. You go down. Pardon us for a second, folks, while we work this out so that we can talk about this a little bit more.
Then go all the way down to the bottom, and you see page numbers down at the bottom.
Okay, let me see here. Related articles. Down to the bottom. You got quite a blog going there. That's pretty good. Okay.
Yeah, almost 100 pages on there.
Wow. Which page now? Page 2, you said?
Page 2.
Page 2. Here we go. A giant is spotted. There it is.
That's it.
A giant. Okay, let's go to that article while you go ahead and tell us about it. Sorry about that, folks.
Well, I start off talking about Isaiah relates that there is coming an army of giants, and that's Isaiah 13, 1 through 8. And in the Septuagint version, it says, I give command and I bring them. Giants are coming to fulfill my wrath, rejoicing at the same time and insulting. And there's a flow here where this interbreeding, this hybrids, these giants are part of the wrath of the Lord, part of what will take place in the time of the tribulation or the time of Jacob's trouble. The verse in Isaiah 13, 1 through 8 echoes a story in Daniel where there's a giant statue, and then it talks about the first part being the king, Persia and so forth, and it goes on down to the very bottom and it describes the feet. And it says that the feet and then the toes are of iron and clay. Now, if I'm not quoting it right, you'll just have to bear with me because I'm not looking at the scripture, but it says that the iron and the miry clay don't mix. Although they're together, they don't mix. And that's part of what Isaiah is saying here as well, is that these giants and these hybrids, which are part angelic and part human, or can be the Eloid, which is part human and part Nephilim, are not going, they just don't fit with mankind. They'll be here in this latter day, they'll be part of the Battle of Armageddon, but they're just, you can't mix the two. They're evil. In fact, they're evil through and through. But anyway, this particular photograph, if you go to the very bottom of that post, you'll see where I've blown it up. or in fact, the Associated Press blew it up. And it shows how much
Holy
taller.
cow!
Yeah, how much taller he is than the average Korean. The average Korean being probably about 5'4" or something like that, and he's a good 10 to 12 feet tall.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's. I'm looking at this photograph. You guys on the video stream can see it, and this guy could play basketball.
Well, in fact, the thread that came out said that he was part of the basketball team, but I've never seen anybody who was twice as tall as anybody else playing basketball. In fact, this guy here could walk up and just slam dunk it just without even bending over.
Holy cow! That guy's like 10 feet tall.
Yeah, at least. Now, the thing that's interesting is you notice the North Korean flag standing right by him, and he's in uniform.
Uh-huh.
Well, this is also echoes the fact that I think that this Roswell incident that I was mentioning to you earlier, I believe that the governments of the world, and this is what I see right here, are in cahoots with DNA manipulation. In fact, some people call it transhumanism, but this mixing of the DNA with these fallen angels to create these hybrids. And the super soldier is what they think they're getting. But what they're actually getting is the Nephilim. It's evil through and through.
Wow. Are you familiar with the theory that Eisenhower met with these beings?
I am. That's why I referred to earlier. I said, well, there's smoke, and there's a lot of smoke about this Roswell and about UFOlogy. Where there's smoke, there's some fire. There's something going on there.
There's something going on there, and your take is that these are the fallen angels.
That's correct. It's not what they tell the government they are, and that's not what people think that are involved in UFOlogy, but that's what they are. They're deceivers. They've deceived all the way from the beginning. This is why in the train of thought I was reading about Genesis, I don't believe these angels, these fallen angels, came up to the daughters of Adam and said, oh, look how great and shiny I am. Let me seduce you. I think it was a forced taking, and that's what we see in this UFO abduction that's going on now, is that the 2% of people who claim to have had an abduction experience, the majority of them are women, and the great majority of those all agree that there's some kind of a sexual manipulation that goes on during the abduction, and they're abducted a second time, and they all have the same like experience, that something that is in their reproduction system, an embryo of some sort of something, is removed from the body.
And then it's gestated artificially, obviously.
Exactly. Now you think about back in this time of Genesis, and you're going to grow a 35-foot tall giant in the womb of a normal human woman. How long is that giant going to be able to gestate before you've got to do a cesarean section?
Not very long.
That's what I think happened in Genesis. These embryos were forcibly taken from these women, and I think that's what's going on today. It's the same old thing. It's just got a different word. They're now visitors from the stars, the aliens, star gods, where the Bible refers to them as they're fallen angels.
Since we're well and truly onto the UFO track now, let's, in your book, in the UFO chapter, and that's towards the end of the book, so after a bit we're going to have to back up a little bit and talk about Daniel and the Goliath and everything. The chapter in your book reads, before settlers from the Old World came to the New World, North America, the Cherokee already knew the fallen angels. They posed as star gods, and we talked about that a minute ago. Fallen angels visited both North and South America. The remains of 7 to 8 foot tall, red-haired giants have been found in the Midwest, specifically in Nevada. And I saw an episode of, what was it? Ancient Aliens, I think. And they actually examined some of these skulls of these giants that they found out there.
That's correct.
You tell a story in your book about the Cherokees, and I've got part of that missive up on the website now. What did the Cherokees have some special relationship with these quote-unquote star gods, or is this particular story that the Cherokees tell just one that is handed down better than the other tribes?
I think handed down a little better than the other tribes, and I spent some time up in North Carolina in the recent years and did a little bit of research on this. There are also corresponding stories among the Navajo Indians, and of course we all are familiar with the Aztecs and the stories that deal with those. It's all the same thing, just different names.
Now, do you think that just triggered a thought in my sickness and induced fever here? Do you think that all of the supposed quote-unquote advanced knowledge that the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Navajos, out in the Indians that were here on this continent, do you think it's possible that these fallen angels may have given these people advanced knowledge, or maybe possibly some of them lived among them? Is that possible?
Both. I think some of the fallen angels are in human form, even living today. But that's getting a little ahead of ourselves. But if you look at the pyramids and the megaliths throughout the world, the pyramids of South America, the pyramids of Giza, you find things that are common. For instance, Patrick Hundren in his book, The Pyramid of the Apocalypse, talks about the joining of those blocks together, that there's metal poured into a locking device between the blocks. And I was never familiar with this before reading this from Patrick Herndon, but he states that these are the same interlocking devices that are used in South America pyramids and the pyramids that are in Giza. So what you find there, and even those that are underwater, there are some pyramids and megalithic structures that are underwater, they all have the same common thread, is that we can't duplicate today what they did then. So yes, there's a common thread of knowledge that ran in the ancient world. It could have been the fallen angels or their children, the Nephilim. But First Enoch tells us that the fallen angels, those 200 fallen angels that I mentioned earlier, taught mankind knowledge, forbidden knowledge. And that's what we see, are the leftover remnants of that forbidden knowledge, even today.
I'm looking for some of those interlocking metal bars on the internet right now, maybe some photographs of them. Or do you have those at your website?
No, I don't have any on my website. I might have to ask Patrick Herndon if I can borrow some.
I have, I know, you know what the strangest thing is that just today what was I reading? I was reading something at a website, and I saw a photograph of those interlocking bars, and I remember I saw two giant stone blocks with the interlocking bar, and it kind of looks like a miniature barbell.
That's right, exactly. And
it holds,
that miniature barbell is common all across the globe.
That's amazing.
So it shows that the South Americans and the Egyptian area all had the common background, a common originality, if you would, and which is these fallen angels.
Huh. That's that's disturbing in itself. They were that pervasive in society back then, and they thinking is, we'll get into that a little bit deeper later, is that they're still here and they're still messing around.
That's right. See, that's why I stressed earlier about Genesis, the 6th chapter, and after that. See, when the Israelites, and I might be getting ahead of myself here for you, but you remember when the Israelites went into Canaan land, they ran again into giants.
Yes.
We mentioned Goliath earlier. You know, it's funny how we can sit in Sunday school our entire lives and we hear the story about Goliath and, you know, David slaying Goliath, and we never stop and ask ourselves, well, now, how do you get a giant? What causes a giant? The only thing that causes a giant is what we read about in Genesis, the 6th chapter. Now, Genesis says that all flesh was destroyed in the flood. That meant there wasn't any giants holding on to the ark coming, you know. That didn't happen.
Right, and so, I've got Genesis 6 up on the screen now for the video side of the audience there.
All right, we see what it says in that verse, and after that. That's
yes.
referring to the fact that the same incursion that happened with fallen angels in Genesis happened again, and we can infer that it's happening today. And for a fact, our Lord said, as in the days of Noah, so shall be in the latter days. We should look for the same things going on. Now, does that mean these people, these fallen angels, are going to come out and say, hey, look at me, I have wings? First of all, they probably don't have wings, but hey, I'm a fallen angel and, you know, I'm a bad boy. No, they're not going to do that. They're going to do what they've always done. They're going to say they're from the stars. Well, anyway, Goliath was a giant. His father, therefore, had to have been either a Nephilim or a fallen angel. That's the only way you're going to get a giant is from a fallen angel. It's just the way it works.
Right.
Now, when the Israelites went into Canaan land and they sent forth the spies, the first thing that the spies did when they came back, they said, oh, you know, we are so afraid because we are like grasshoppers in the sight of the individuals in this land. Of course, I'm paraphrasing all of this. But when they went into Canaan, they saw all of these gigantic giants, and they were fearful. Now, they saw giants like Goliath, but my feelings are Goliath was a short, small giant. I feel like some of them were as large as 35 feet tall. I was recently, well, back in 2000 anyway, I was in the Holy Land, and I was in Jerusalem, and I went up into the Western Tunnel.
Uh-huh.
And there's a block in which is part of the foundational area. I mean, it would go back in millennia in time, but there was a block there that was 450 tons. And if I remember correctly, there were only only two notches in that block. No more than 4 people could have picked it up. Now, if you do the math, you start finding out that those 4 people had to have been gigantic in order to pick up a 450-ton block of granite. Now, that's the same thing you find throughout the world with these megaliths. And there's a famous story of Gilgamesh, and you see these statues of Gilgamesh where he's holding a lion underneath both arms. Now, doing a little bit of math and the weight of a lion, you can construct the fact that Gilgamesh had to weigh 1,000 pounds himself. He was, of course, a Nephilim.
Okay, we're getting a picture of Gilgamesh, the one that you're talking about where he's holding a lion.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have been at least 12 feet tall.
Oh, yeah.
That's
and
huge.
there's stories of among the American Indians as well, particularly among the Navajo, that there were giants here when they came, and that they were able to catch a buffalo and hold that buffalo up underneath one arm while they ran. And the story goes that when you see in television and the movies where the Indians say "how" to each other and they hold up their hand with their fingers spread. Well, the legend goes that the reason they did that was they were looking to see how many fingers that individual had. Now, if you go back to like Nevada, you find that in the ancient times, these Indians made pictographs, where they would write on the stones and draw pictures on the stones. They're called pictographs.
Right.
And they did on these stones, very interestingly, I think it's Lovelock, Nevada, I believe is the name of the city. These fingers, these hand pictures, are 6 fingers.
Really?
Yes. So they were looking at that time here, even in the United States, were some of these creatures, and that was, well after the time of Canaan, probably. But when the Israelites went into Canaan, they found the giants already there. In fact, there were tribes of them: the Zemzumrians, the Hissites, the Hezhites. Just this whole conglomeration of giants that you can't even pronounce their names. But there were quite a few of them, and the Israelites. In fact, when people read the Old Testament, a lot of times they think God was very rigid, and they don't understand him, because he told the Israelites, oftentimes when you go into that town, destroy every man, woman, child, and beast among them. Now, when I read that one time, I thought, now why would God want the beast destroyed? Well, it's not until you understand what was going on. These angels were doing the same thing. These fallen angels were doing the same thing they had done in Genesis. They were cohabitating, would be a nice way to put it, with women, children, and beasts, as they had in the days of Genesis, and producing these hybrids. So when God said, you go into this town, into this city, and you destroy everything, it's because of this corrupted DNA. And that's what these fallen angels were attempting to do in the days of Noah. And they attempted to do it again in Canaan land, was to corrupt the DNA of humanity. And that's the reason that God said, when you go in there, destroy every living thing.
So this goes, excuse me, this goes back to the, I think it's backing up in the story a little bit, getting a little bit of a historical perspective, but it's, this goes back to the Dark Lords and the days of Jared, right?
Correct.
Right.
The 200 fallen angels, the 200 watchers, descended upon Mount Harmon in the days of Gerard, yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I've got that up on the screen now, and it says, it was the first time the fallen angels did this, but it was not the last. These beings of the realm were never intended to procreate with humanity. In fact, they were expressly forbidden to do so. And I believe in the book I read that once they come here to our dimension and procreate with people, or even just the act of coming here, they can't go back, can they?
That's my understanding from reading Jude. Jude talks about in the 6th to the 7th verse, Jude is one of the little epistles in the New Testament, that the angels left their, the one translation says domain, one says dominion, one says habitation. But what it's trying to say is when they left their spiritual body and they took on a human form, which if you stop and thought just a minute, can angels do this? Well, yes, they can. Think about the angels that went with into Sodom and got Lot out. They looked like people.
Right.
The angels that talked to Abraham looked like people. The angel that wrestled with Jacob looked like a person. They're able to take on this human form, but once they've expended the energy, if you would, to take on human form, without God's provision, I don't believe they're able to come back. I think the gravity of what they've done doesn't allow them, once they've made that crossover, to go back.
I think probably since God forbid them to do it, there's probably a little bit of rule breaking in one-way doors.
That's my feeling about it.
God's rule is still paramount, even above these fallen angels.
That's correct.
And I think that's one very important thing that people can take away from this, is just because we're talking about the fallen angels and the Nephilim and the giants and how evil they are, and you're going to hear in a few minutes exactly how bad these people are, that God's rule is still above them.
Right. Paul talked about we're in an unseen battle against spiritual wickedness, spiritual darkness, evil in high places, spiritual wickedness in high places. And in fact, there was a story in Daniel where Daniel sits down to pray. And there's an angel sent from the very moment he begins to pray, but this angel is hindered from coming to Daniel by the prince of Persia. And then it says one of the archangels comes, we call him one of the archangels, comes and fights with the prince of Persia, who's obviously another angel, a fallen angel, and allows this messenger angel to come to Daniel. But Daniel doesn't see this going on. This is in a realm that he doesn't see. So Paul is referring to this unseen battle that takes place. Most Christians are somewhat aware that we're in an unseen battle, but they've never stopped to realize where that unseen battle crosses over into the seen.
Oh, let me describe the angel that came to Daniel. I've got this up on the screen now. The battle for Daniel, and I love this description. And I lifted up mine eyes, and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen, and girded about with gold, whose face was like the appearance of lightning, and his eyes were as lamps of fire, and his arms and legs looked like shining brass, and the voice of his words were as the voice of a multitude, one like the resemblance of the sons of man. An angel said to me, O Daniel, understand that which I speak, for I have been sent to you from the first day that you prayed. And I see the one line in there, one like the resemblance of the sons of men. And that's the fallen angels, isn't it?
Well, the terminology sons of God is a generic terminology for an angel. Angels can be fallen, which was a concept that they've broken the rules, they rebelled from God, or they can be among those who haven't. They're still angels.
Right. And let's see, I came because of your prayer, but the dark lord, the prince of the kingdom of the Persians, withstood me until Michael, a chief prince, came to help me. Can you imagine that? The archangel Michael coming to
pretty awesome.
That is, I mean, that when you picture it, I mean, here's Daniel, and he's praying for, he's praying to God, and God tells this angel, you go down there and you answer his prayer, and he's doing battle with the fallen angels until the archangel Michael comes along and just sweeps them aside so that this angel can go to Daniel. And that's remarkable. Now, it says here the prince of the Persians. What is that about?
Well, the angels in the spiritual wickedness in the higher places, these angels are obviously given authority over territories and kingdoms. And the Bible, when it speaks of the prince of the Persians, are usually referring to a human person, but an angelic force or angelic being that's behind that person. The Bible will often refer to that angel back behind that person, howbeit fallen angel, in reference to the person that it's talking to, sort of like talking through that person to the fallen angel. And that's what we find today, is that kingdoms of the world, remember Lucifer took Jesus up onto a high mountain. I think it was the parable, the part of the Temple Mount, and looked down on the kingdoms of the world, and obviously he owned the kingdoms of the world, and he said, I'll give these unto you. You remember that story in the New Testament?
Yes, it was part of the 40 days and 40 nights that Jesus fasted in the desert.
Right. So these kingdoms have as their headship, like if we think about it today, the United States has an angel back behind it. All of the countries of the world, and probably all the way down to political movements, to states, to cities, have angelic beings that are controlling them. See, we think today that everything is controlled by people. Well, they're not. These angels are back behind the situation, manipulating to their own agenda what's going on. And that's what you see here in this book of Daniel, is it's shedding light on the fact that the Persians, that empire of the Persians, had back behind it a fallen angel who was actually the one that was in charge. Now, we have that same thing today. In fact, in the book, I talk about in the unseen battle, I talk about the Battle of the Mons in Belgium during the First World War. And the English were basically getting whipped.
Oh, yes, I remember this story in the book. This is, you go ahead, this is an amazing story, folks.
Well, the British were evidently getting whipped, and things were right down to the line. And if I remember correctly, it was at night, and just before they got whipped, the Germans saw a huge host of angels on the British side, and they basically retreated. And we find these interruptions into our own affairs only briefly, for small instances in time. For instance, another one is of Constantine, when it had come down to the line, and Constantine, if you remember Constantine the Great, about 312 A.D.
Right.
He was at the Battle of the Melvin Bridge, which was the turning point of whether he would conquer his adversaries and take over the Caesarship of the Roman Empire. And he saw in the heavens an emblem of a cross. And this was, again, a spiritual kind of thing that happened, that he saw into another realm. And so he was therefore invigorated to charge and to take hold of the thing and do what he needed to do. And he had all of his soldiers paint that on his shields. Right. And of course he won. And history tells us that he released all of the Christians from jail. But more than that, he had, to the Christians who had been jailed by the previous Caesar, he restored to all the churches the properties that had been taken from them.
Wow.
But these are just small instances to amplify the fact that we are in an unseen. There's a battle going on around us all of the time. And occasionally I get glimpses of this myself. I've seen, into the spiritual realm where I've seen angels warring. I've looked up, I've seen, if you would, fallen angels. I've seen good angels. And, there's this war going on around us. Paul tells us about it, like I mentioned earlier, all of the time. And as Christians, we're aware that we're struggling with something. We just don't realize what we're struggling with are fallen angels in the spiritual realm. And then, like I've talked about in this book, there are times that some of them have crossed over into the physical realm, and some of us in humanity struggle with those.
Those are the what our viewers will remember that Russ Dizdar was telling us about, and that would be the demonic possessions and the Satan worshippers.
That's correct. That and then the UFO phenomena is certainly demonic, certainly fallen angel activity.
Wow. While you were talking about that, and I hate to get off the track because we got some. I wanted to have you talk about your experience while you were walking your dog.
Mm-hmm.
But what you were just talking about, that the nations have angels behind them. Here in the United States, I'm just going from my perspective as an American, and not talking about other countries. We know that the people that founded this country look to divine providence for guidance and for backing. And it sort of seems that we have gotten away from that, and it looks to me like some of the people that are now and have been leading the country are just the opposite. They're calling on the dark side.
That's correct. Just
I hate to get political about it, but it just occurs to me that we are losing our divine providence, and we're
Don't
letting
think
it
there's
happen.
any question we've lost it.
And we're letting it happen.
Yes, right. I think there's a very good possibility that if you've read the book of Revelation, you run into something that's called Mystery Babylon. Now, it's not called mystery for no reason at all. It's called mystery because it's not the real physical Babylon. You know, many Bible expositors will preach that Babylon the Great has to be rebuilt, and it'll be rebuilt in Iraq before the day of the Lord returns. Well, that's not what it's talking about. It uses the word in the book of Revelation, mystery Babylon. It wouldn't have said mystery if it wasn't a mystery. But if you read the description of Babylon, the mystery Babylon, unfortunately, Bill, it seems that the description could very well fit America today. We may be mystery Babylon.
I agree. That could very, very well be.
It says that Mystery Babylon says she sits as a queen above the nations. And it goes on to talk about, even uses the word souls of men and slavery. Well, America has been guilty of slavery. You know, it's a blight on our past. We can't get away from it. But it mentions that in Mystery Babylon. And it mentions the fact that all the merchants of the world, when Mystery Babylon is destroyed, that they weep for her. Well, there's no other country in the world that's affected Western civilization more than America has, and more than America does. So we carry, you know, whether we're Mystery Babylon or not, we carry an awesome responsibility in our effect to the entire world. And we're not, like you said, we're not upholding rightfully the mantle that we've had. We've lost it. We're known now among parts of the world. Iran, for instance, calls us the Great Satan. You know, it sees our Western influence as corrupt. And I don't back Iran. I back Israel 100%. But I can see how some of the Middle East thinks that America is corrupt, because in a lot of ways it is very corrupt.
Yes, I have to agree with that. That analysis. That is that's definitely food for thought, and I think we need to get away from that as Americans and get back to the original concept. Now, in your book, at the very end of the book, you were talking about when you were walking your dog and you saw one of these creatures, that one of them was presented to you, and it was the reason why you wrote the book.
That's correct. Bill, the book has been in gestation for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I sat down period. It took about a period of about 8 months to write. But about the 7th month into the book, I still wasn't sure I was going to publish it. You know, I've paid a price. Anytime I've talked about these things, you know, people have wanted to roll their eyes. I've talked about the economy is near collapse, and I've done that for 30 years, and mentioned that we needed to get off of stocks and bonds and buy gold and silver, and people would just roll their eyes, and you don't know what you're talking about. And so the price, I felt like when this book came out, was going to be even heavier to pay. And I wasn't sure that I was going to publish it, even though I was almost through writing it. So I think the Lord did this for me. One evening, I was up in the mountains of North Carolina. And by the way, let me not forget to tell you that a little bit after this happened, in the same area, a motorist took a picture on a cell phone of a creature like I saw running across the road.
Wow.
And that's on one of my websites, NephilimGiants.com. But it was dark one night, probably 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and the dog, I was up writing, and it was time to go to bed, and I was going to take the dog out, which is Star, one last time. You know, I wish we were like a dog sometimes. She gets treats every time she has to go out. Don't you wish every time you had to go to the bathroom somebody'd give you a treat?
I give myself a treat.
But anyway, I opened the door, and I said, "Okay, Star, let's go outside." Well, she didn't really want to go. And I'm thinking, I don't understand this, but all right. So I walked on out ahead of her, and she, with a lot of resistance, sort of followed my steps. And we had a long, curving driveway and bushes on each side of the driveway going down the hill to the bottom of the hill. And I looked, and somewhere between about 10 yards and 15 yards, or 10 or 20 yards, somewhere in there, there was a rather large tree that was straight, like a pine tree, didn't have any low limbs on it. And behind it, lo and behold, was this creature, 10 or 12 feet tall, stood upright like a man, and had the face of a dog. And it looks at me one way and turns its head, and it looks the other way and turns its head, and just stares at me. Well, I know immediately it's what I've been writing about. It's a Nephilim. And I'm thinking, now, what do I do? And I'm thinking, the best thing for me to do is turn around and walk back in the house and lock my door. And
quickly.
That's what I did.
At a rapid rate.
At a rapid rate. I wasn't fearful, interesting or not until I got in and shut the door and locked it. Then I got to thinking, that thing could have tore me from limb to limb.
Yeah, and your poor puppy dog, too.
Oh, she had, yeah, could have eaten her, no problem. 49 pounds, that would have been a snack.
And then, of course, in total wisdom, your wife went out there later on, didn't she?
Yes, she did. She said, I just got to go out here and see this for myself. And I'm thinking, you're a nut. But she goes out anyway. This 15 or 20 minutes later, after she sort of discussed it and gotten up the courage, and she opens the door and pokes her head out and doesn't see anything, so she walks out there a little farther. She never did see anything, but she said that she felt the greatest evil that she had ever felt. And she immediately came back in.
Now, you know, I have felt evil before. In fact, after we had Pastor Russ on, and we talked about the evil ones and possessions and things like that. That night, I was woken up in the middle of the night, and I tell you what, my bedroom was just absolutely freezing cold, and it just felt like there was just like some thing staring at me very malevolently. And so I prayed and essentially went back to sleep, and it was a very, very disturbing experience.
Well, you know, this is a good point too, Bill. I'd like to mention that in the name of Jesus, I believe these things are at our mercy, so to speak.
Yes.
I was when I was 17 years old, I gave my life to Christ. I asked him to come into my life, into my heart, and I made him the Lord of my life. And that's been about 30 years ago, so I've had a lot of experiences since then. I've had experiences like you're mentioning. I woke up in the middle of the night and felt like something was choking me to death and was sitting on top of me. And
Yeah.
I've always found if I could get out the name of Jesus, if I could just whisper it, think it hard enough, yell it, whatever the case is, just the name of Jesus, these things would stop and they'd go away. So I think that night in the back of my mind, I was aware that if I needed to pull out that name of Jesus and use it, that creature would have just, you know, melted away, run away, or whatever the case might have been.
Well, God still has the ultimate power over them, and if you use His name, they can't stand up against it.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And the friend you mentioned had been on the show earlier. I've had some experiences where I've dealt with these spiritual forces head to head, and I was born without a sense of smell. I can't smell anything, but I have smelled when some of these spiritual forces have been cast out of people. I have smelled a stench that was so horrible it would make your nose crinkle, and I can't smell.
Wow.
So these spiritual things even have some kind of a spiritual smell to them when they come out of people and people are released from them. But yes, back to you, Bill. I didn't mean to go off on the rabbit trail.
No, that's okay. It was. I'm just thinking back to the experience that I had, and even though I didn't turn on a light or anything and look to see what was standing there, but I mean, you could certainly feel the presence. And after that, I keep a Bible next to my bed now. that has not happened since then.
Well, good.
And
you know, there's what do they call it? Sleep paralysis.
Yes.
Where somebody's sleeping in the middle of the night and they wake up but they can't move a muscle in their body. This kind of thing responds also to the name of Jesus. I'd just like your viewers to know that. There is freedom there in the name of Jesus for that kind of thing.
Yes, I totally agree with that. That's what our shows are all about. There are a couple of other topics that I want to hit on before we wrap up the show, and one of them is, and we got to get to what's happening right now and the grand conspiracy. But one of the things that I wanted to have you talk about is the Stargates that you have in the book. Let me bring that up on the screen. And it goes like this: in some witchcraft and Wiccan systems, the Watchers are beings who guard portals that link worlds together. Within such systems, they are viewed as a spiritual race, a set of deities or spirits of the four elements. These Stargates, they're everybody's probably familiar with the Stargate show.
Yes, it's a good show, by the way.
That is one of my favorite shows. That was one of my favorite movies. I don't know why, but all of that that show just somehow clicked with my subconscious, and it's like, hey, you know what? They're kind of in a roundabout way talking about the same thing that you talk about in the book, aren't they?
Well, in a roundabout way, and that portals and stargates are connections between this realm and the spiritual realm. Not really between worlds as far as this planet and a far-off galaxy. I do want to make that distinction. There are people today, for instance, this fellow that I know is building in his backyard a looks like a doorway that's freestanding with no door in it, just a frame of the doorway, and he's painted it black, and he's put symbols all the way around it, and he's expecting an identity to step out of this doorway. And there are people today that are doing that are going to mountains and looking for orbs. That is some kind of a spiritual identity and like a ball of fire, and this is what they're looking to contact. Now, some of these people think that this is God and how God's going to speak to them, and other people in these Wiccan systems, they know well that these orbs are some kind of a spiritual being. Oftentimes they're fallen angels or they're demonic forces that appear this way. Now, it's not to say that, you know, an angel cannot come from the spiritual realm into this realm. They certainly can, and they do. And sometimes that creates a what we call a portal event, which is an event where, and it doesn't have to be this way, but oftentimes associated with a spiritual being coming from the spiritual realm into the physical realm, you can have all kinds of physical manifestations: lightnings,
Right.
fire, smoke. It can be like clouds around it, and you'll see sometimes this same phenomena around UFOs. The greatest example of a spiritual movement from the spiritual realm to this realm is when God's throne moves from the spiritual realm to this realm.
Yes, I was hoping you'd mention that.
Well, Ezekiel talked about it. But more specifically, Mount Sinai is a point that we know that God came in contact with the earth. And it said that the mountain quaked. In other words, it caused an earthquake. There was fire, there was lightnings upon the mountain, and there was smoke. Now, those kinds of things happen, or can happen, even when angels come into this realm, whether they be good angels or bad angels. But it doesn't have to be that way. That's the interesting thing about it. Now, if you watch or if you read any of the literature, maybe even the History Channel or the Discovery Channel, when they thing that's interesting about these UFOs, for instance, is they can be tracked on radar, they can be physical,
Right.
but yet they can disappear in an instant in front of a fighter pilot, and they're not there. That is, what is that then? That is something that became physical and then became non-physical or interdimensional. It goes between the dimensions. Fallen angel.
Wow. So let's pin this down. All UFOs are the tools of the fallen angels?
If they're truly a unidentified object. Now, many of the UFO or unidentified flying objects could be any number of things. You know, sometimes people mistake balloons for them. They can be aircraft. They can be many things that, you know, just strictly or generically unidentified. But a truly unidentified object that we're talking about is a fallen angel.
Right. But at the same time, the good angels, the agents of God, also come into our realm to help people.
They do, and they can also, when they do cross into the realm, they can be with a lot of physical manifestation, or may not have any physical manifestation.
I remember one story from about I want to say 15 or 20 years ago. We had a weather guy on one of our local stations, and I can't remember what network it was with. His name is Rob Kress, and I think he wrote a book about this too. His daughter was it was either his daughter or his son in the hospital, and it was touch and go. They didn't know if the kid was going to live or not. And he's a Christian, and he went to the hospital, and I think it was a Henry Ford hospital here in Detroit, and there was an older black guy, and he was dressed like a janitor, and he had sawdust on his shoulders and on his arms and everything. And he said, "Robert, your child will be just fine. Your child will live." And right at that moment, his kid got better.
Mm-hmm. I've actually heard that story.
Like a miracle. And this happened right here in the Detroit area, and it's it's similar to some things that I've experienced, where there's been a couple of times where I should have been hurt very badly or even died, and some unseen force, some presence saved me.
I was 19 years old, and I was stationed in the Air Force at the time at Shore Air Force Base in South Carolina.
Uh-huh.
And I had gone down to Columbia that night to a Bible study, and I was on the way back. And just before I could get back to the Air Force Base, there was a side road that intersected with the highway that I was on. And this car pulled out into the middle of the highway, blocking both lanes. And I got up so close to that car. I was doing 55 miles an hour. I remember exactly having checked it before this happened. And I got up within 3 or 4 feet of the car. I could see the car had 2 girls in it, and one was a dark-haired girl in the passenger seat. And just before my little truck that I was driving impacted that car, it literally disappeared and reappeared, I'd say a half a mile down the road in the vertical direction where it had been parallel to the highway earlier.
Yes.
It saved my life. It had, I was hitting on, in fact, I was so close I had begun to brake and decided, there's no way. Lord, I'll just have to trust you. And I'd pulled my foot off the brake, and the instant I did that's when the car was moved physically down the road.
And I think that that goes a lot with the next subject that I want to talk about, and that is the trust that we have to place. And something extremely similar to that happened to me once, where I had a dog. Her name was Sweetie Pie, and she was that was her name. She was an
well,
Irish.
This is mine's name Star. So
she was an Irish wolfhound, and she was a stray, and she had been abused. And we got her. She just wandered into our yard and basically just walked up to the door and said, "Hi, Dad, I'm here now." And
that's the best kind.
Oh, I'm telling you, CK, she was my best friend. She was one of those once-in-a-lifetime dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife at the time, she was homesick with the flu, and Sweetie Pie was a young dog. She was probably 8-9 months old, so she was only about 75, 80 pounds at the time. And she just simply wouldn't listen to my wife at the time. Just like, whatever, you're not my dad. And she took the thing out for a walk, and the dog saw a squirrel and took off and started dragging her across the yard, and she just let go of the leash. And she called me while I was at work, and I was like 30 minutes away. And she called me and said, "Dude, stupid dog of yours just ran away." And I said, "Well, I got to come home and I got to find her," because she was, a wild, still a puppy. So
Mm-hmm.
and she was almost 100 pounds. So she could have been 100 miles away by that time. And I had to get home to look for the dog, and I couldn't find my car keys. Couldn't find them anywhere at work. And this went on for about 10 minutes, and I finally stopped, and I said, "God, I need to find my car keys." And I thought I'd jump up on a skid of boxes to look to see if I could spot my keys somewhere in the room, and the first place I put my hand was where my car keys were.
Mm-hmm.
They're right in my hand. So I got
How
my
about
car,
that?
I raced home. Okay, I was flying down the highway. Get off the highway, and I'm going down the road, and there's my dog tied up by the side of the road around a street sign. Somebody had to have taken that leash off that dog and got that dog to stay, wrap that leash around that signpost, and put that leash back on that dog in the very spot where I would have driven by.
That's right. That's what I was sitting there thinking, is it would have had to have been where you would have driven by and seen her.
right exactly where I was starting to look for, and she saw me, started wagging her tail, and I said, "Get in the car," and she hopped in the car, and that was that.
We had an experience just a few months ago here in the motorhome. Right now, I'm staying in a motorhome in a motorhome park, and I travel a little bit, so that's the reason I've got a motorhome. And it was, I would say, 8 or 9, maybe 10 o'clock one night here in the motorhome park, and I heard all these sirens, and I went outside to see what they were. Well, there were fire trucks coming up. One of the motorhomes was on fire, and the guy's name was Bill, who owned the motorhome. And I got to talking to him, and I talked to the couple who I primarily remember talking to the man, and who had woke him up. And what was interesting about it, this is the story. This couple was riding through the park out of nowhere, don't live in the park, just riding through the park, saw the motorhome with smoke coming out of it. They stopped, they get out of their automobile and beat on the door till they wake him up.
Wow.
And get him out of the motorhome. And then they disconnect the propane tank and roll it down the street before the fire trucks get here. And then after this is over, they leave. Nobody knows where they came from, who they were, where they were staying, or why they ever stopped to beat on the door. Angels unaware.
I believe that we have established that we do in fact have agents of God looking out for us.
We do, and I think that's a good thing to establish here. We're talking about the evil and the conspiracies of evil in the world. It's a good point to make, to note that we also have God that's working on our side, and he's the bigger boy.
Exactly. He's the big boy, and he does take care of you. I have experienced it, CK's experienced it, and I would bet that 90% of our audience has experienced it too, and a lot of them probably just don't realize it. A lot of them probably just simply don't realize it. And it can go from, you know, your pets, like me, to actually saving your life in a fire. But what I want to finish up the show with is talking about the conspiracy that exists now, the conspiracy that is trying to take over our world, our political system, our governments, our society. They're trying to establish the mark of the beast as we speak right now, and I think they're well on their way to doing it.
Yes, the New World Order.
Yes, the New World Order. I have that up on the screen. Webster's describes paranoia as a belief in delusions of danger and persecution. However, I propose that if the danger is real and the evidence is credible, then it cannot be delusional.
That's correct. In other words, if there's a true conspiracy, it's a true conspiracy. You're not nuts.
Exactly. It's not a conspiracy theory. And
that's right.
You have some very strong feelings on this, as do I and most of our guests, and you have the Bible to back you up as well as this book. So I'd like to get a little bit more in depth with you about what you feel is going on right now and what the end game is and when the end game may be coming.
Okay. I grew up in South Georgia, and there was an island there called Jekyll Island. And so I grew up reading about the fact that the Federal Reserve, as you know, was birthed on Jekyll Island. And the people of that time, the great wealthy people, had houses on Jekyll Island. And I grew up looking at these houses and reading some of the history about it. And all my life I've heard of the Bilderbergs, the Carnegies. And then as I grew older, I heard about Freemasonry, the Illuminati. And then you've got things like the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and so forth. And, you know, you hear about all these different conspiracies, and people get pretty involved in it. But I think the crucial element of any conspiracy, if there is a conspiracy, is who controls the money can control the world.
Right.
And if you look at money and what it really is, it's the world system. Now, in the book of Revelation, where there's a thing in there where it talks about the mark of the beast, is what we normally would call it. But it says that any man that would buy or sell, okay, that refers to commerce of any type, would have to have a mark on their hand. I believe it's the right forehead or the right hand. And then it gives some description that this mark of the beast is 666. But without going into possibly what it is, it certainly will have to be something that sets a person apart and that it controls and dominates the monetary system.
That would be your debit card.
Well, except that, well, I think the debit card is something you can put in your pocket. It's not something that is tattooed or transcribed on you as a person. And I think that the mark of the beast is referring to something that's very personally put on a person, or something that a person becomes. Now, because of the reason for this is once the mark is taken, you can't go back. You know, something like a debit card, you use it, you put it in your pocket, or you send it back to whoever gave it to you. It's not permanently part of you. The mark of the beast will have to be something that you merge with, that permanently becomes part of you. Now, that's one of the things that have concerned me about tattooing. I've had people ask me about Christianity and tattooing. Well, the New Testament doesn't say anything about tattoos, but the Old Testament is very clear that God doesn't like them. So I think one of the reasons that I'm leery of it, and what bothers me about it, is in Revelation, and I believe it's the 16th chapter, but I'm not positive. If you wanted to check and see, it talks about this mark of the beast. But where the Bible is saying that things are heading is toward a one-world government and a one-world monetary system. Now, the powers that be, these fallen angels, that's what they're working toward. That's what the true conspiracy is a new one-world government with a one-world monetary system. All these other minor conspiracies, I have no doubt exist, but they're minor. The main conspiracy are with these fallen angels, both in the spiritual realm and some of those which have taken on physical form in this realm. They would be the real power brokers that would be behind the monetary systems of the world. And those are the ones we're really dealing with. Back to you.
And we have the Bilderbergers, the Lucas Trust, the Club of Rome, the Carnegies, Freemasonry, the Illuminati. Now, obviously not all the members are going to be fallen angels.
Oh, no, certainly not.
But the leadership, the ones that have duped the humans into seeing their way, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that we have to worry about. The real the powers that be. Can
you pull up page 102 in the book? There's a quote there by Franklin Roosevelt.
Oh shoot, I can't do it because I don't have.
Okay, let me just read this to you. In November the 21st of 1933, President Franklin Roosevelt made this statement. The real truth of the matter is, as you and I know, that a financial element in the large centers has owned the government ever since the days of Andrew Jackson. Now that's Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who served 3 terms as president and would have served his 4th one had he not died, who made that statement.
Yes.
A president basically saying that the real truth of the matter was that there was a financial element that controlled the country.
And we have seen we have seen sudden passings of people that have talked about that. John Kennedy.
That's correct, and he certainly suddenly passed, didn't he?
Yes. I don't recall how Eisenhower passed away, but he gave his farewell address about the military-industrial
complex. That's right.
Yes.
It was something to be feared.
Yes, and as it turns out, he was absolutely correct. Now, this let me get this one part here about the one world government. And you said in your book, these fallen angels control a network of foundations, banks, oil cartels, corporations, and associations controlling the greater part of the global economy. How does the and I hate to go here because I know it's going to get people upset. How does the Federal Reserve figure into this? Because I know you mentioned that in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Is this part of that cabal?
Well, let me quote something that I said in the book, and this is quoting Pat Robertson. Pat Robertson states that the elite realized that America would not join any scheme for world government without a change in public opinion. Now, how do you bring about a change in public opinion, and how do you bring about a new one world government and a one world monetary system? Well, the only way to do that is to collapse the one that you've got, is to bring it into ill repute. And that's what we're seeing happening today. The Federal Reserve, as much as it has tried to control the economy, has found that it's unwieldy. It's out of their control. The Federal Reserve Board is actually a corporation. It's not even an arm of the government.
Right.
It's sort of a joke. But nonetheless, it controls a great deal of power and all of the money. But it still seems like it's incapable of really and truly controlling this economy, or perhaps more enlightenedly is there's an agenda to collapse the economy, both in America and the world, to bring about the need for a new currency.
Are you familiar with Cloward and Piven?
No, I'm not.
Cloward and Piven, they were a couple of 60s professors, and they wrote a paper that proposed that in order to replace a system of government with one that you want, what you have to do is overload the current system until it collapses.
Exactly.
And I think Piven was the woman, part of that team. And she was a frequent visitor to the Clinton White House, and I believe she has counseled people in the current administration. I'm not sure about the Bush administration, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, there seems to have been an agenda with these previous administrations to bring about this one world government. I think that their thought processes possibly are that this is a good thing for the world. This is a good thing for America. But, you know, we understand the book of Revelation. We understand where it's going, and the agenda is not good. And that's what the Bible brings out. A one world government, a one world monetary system for the world and for Christianity particularly is not a good thing. But that's where it's heading. That's where these fallen angels and this conspiracy of evil is heading. All under the guise that it might be a better tomorrow. But there's really not. It's not a better tomorrow.
No. All we have to look forward to is a gigantic Soviet economic and political system.
The bear is not asleep.
No, the bear is not asleep. And it goes back to something that I heard just a couple of days ago, that with the problems in Greece and Portugal and Spain, with them being downgraded, and we know Greece is basically on fire now, if those three countries fall, then the whole of the Europe is going to fall too, the financial system there. And what people are wondering, what do you think is going to happen when the Soviets see that Europe is completely open for the taking? What do you think they're going to do? Especially with the noises that they're making, and then it's going to be a brand new Cold War. And I got a sneaking suspicion that the powers that be here in the Western world are going to go along with it.
Well, I think that the problem is any bear will go after a weakened animal. You know, if that animal represents food and they see a weakness in it, they'll go after it. And I think just as in the case of the Great Depression, and that is as if we're not in one now, which I believe we are.
Yes.
But in what's termed the Great Depression, it first began in Europe and spread to America. And I think the same thing is taking place in Europe today. We see Greece and Italy. We'll see Spain, Ireland, the UK, Germany. All of them will fall economically, and it'll pull us into the economic fall as well. And I think out of that will arise the Antichrist. The one world system, one world monetary system will arise out of that.
To finish up the show, as Christians, what should we do? What can we do?
Well, one, we can heed the alarm. We can call to others and say, wake up, read your Bible, read the book of Revelation. We're on the doorsteps. Number two, I believe there's a biblical injunction to prepare for the unprepared. It says, Jesus talks about when you see the Antichrist, it's in the Gospels, don't come down off your roof and get in your house and pack your belongings, but jump down, I'm paraphrasing this of course, and run to the mountains. Well, I think the same thing is true for Christians. We need to prepare. If we've got money in the stock markets, we need to get it out. You know, we need to buy tangible things that we can hold in our hands, gold, silver. We need to be prepared to protect our homes, our families. We need, especially, as much as is possible, we need to buy food ahead of what we just normally use for our consumption.
Right.
And to have a get out of town bag in the back of your car so that you can leave on a moment's notice if you have to is not a bad idea. I don't think we want to be in the cities when the collapse comes. And I think one of the things as Christians we need to understand is that our trust is in God. It's not in stocks and bonds. It's not in what we have in the bank. I believe the day will come shortly, and it'll be on us that you go to the bank will be closed. You will not be able to get your money. The whole FDIC thing is lack of a better word, it's a farce.
Yeah.
There's not enough money printed in the federal government to put your money back into every bank account when the banks lose it all. So part of what we need to do as Christians is we need to heed the call. We need to wake up. We need to make preparations both spiritually, make sure our hearts are right, and financially and physically for times to get hard. And when those times get hard, to be able to be a light, to be a salt to those around us.
Do you think we still have time to wake up those that are sleeping? Or do you think the time has passed? So far, the opinion of all of our guests is split right down the line, 50-50.
I think that we're so close that I'm holding my breath. I don't know how else to answer that. I don't know if we have enough time to wake up the country or wake up the world. I don't know. I'm trying to.
Right.
But I don't know that we do.
I know.
We're close.
Yeah, everybody's got the same feeling that we are very close to the edge of the abyss, and it's simply not a good thing. It's very scary.
That's correct.
Very, very scary. Well, CK, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, I certainly appreciate being on this show.
This has, like I told you before the show, there's some guests that come on when I'm looking at the clock and I go, oh, God, can't we even get a half an hour out of this thing? And there's some shows like this one with you where I just looked at the clock on the audio server here, and we've already been on the air for 2 hours. So that's a good thing. This is a show that I have just absolutely loved doing.
Well, Bill, I appreciate that. I've certainly enjoyed talking with you and your guests tonight.
And we have an entire network of people that will take this show and they're going to spread it around and get as many people as they can to listen to what we've been talking about tonight. And I believe, and I'm serious about this, folks, you need to purchase this guy's book. Even if you don't use the link at my website, you need to get a hold of this book. That's absolutely for sure, because he's been shown a few things, and I think that he's been shown the truth, and he is telling us the truth. Now, next Wednesday, along the same lines as this, on the 22nd, we are going to have a gentleman by the name of Cliff High on, and he was our very first guest on our very first show, and he publishes a what is called the Webbot. He's a linguist, and he takes what people are saying on the internet, what's going on the internet, and all the different things that people are saying, and he applies linguistic science to it. And he's coming on next Wednesday, and his take on all of this is time's up. Time is up as of right now. And he has told me that what he has to tell us is not good news. And I believe that it is going to be the perfect show to follow this one up with, because it's coming right down to the wire, folks, and we have to be very, very cognizant of that fact. And it's time to put up or shut up, and it's time to start getting prepared. And as CK said in the book, it is no longer time to be politically correct and sit in the pews. You have to get up and shout it from the rooftops. Hopefully I got that quote right, CK.
You did. You did.
Okay, good. Anyways.
It's time to put off the slumber.
It's time to put off the slumber, get the shake the sleep from your shoulders, and good Lord, stop watching American Idol and get out there and experience what's going on out there. I always have to end up with American Idol somehow. CK, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we'd like to have you on again at some point to discuss all of this further. Maybe as we get a little bit further down the road to disaster.
I'd be glad to.
Yes, so we can have some discussion on the preparation and the signs to look for and everything. And with that, we're going to end the show. CK, I appreciate you coming on the show. We will be in touch with you shortly. And I appreciate you coming on. Good luck, and don't let your motorhome catch on fire.
No, we won't do that. And hopefully if that did happen, there'd be angels to knock on our door and wake us up as well. I am sure there would be. Thank you, CK, again for coming on the show. Thank you, Bill. Yep. Good night. And that, folks, was CK Quarterman. He is the author of the book that we have been talking about all night. You need to get it. You need to click on that link on the website, and you need to download the Kindle application for your computer so that you can read electronic books on your computer, and you need to buy that book. That is... I'm serious about that. So, I'm going to go take my medication that I need to take for my pneumonia, and we are going to end the show. I appreciate you all showing up. The MP3 of this will be in the audio rotation almost immediately, and the video presentation will be up on YouTube, and this will start repeating in about 10 seconds. Thank you for showing up. Have a good evening, and we will see all of you next Tuesday night when L.A. Marzulli is coming back. Yes, one of my favorite guests.